All right, forgive me for not pronouncing names correctly in French words. I don't know French. All right, let's start with the number 20 in this unit 2, I think. Letter to the resident minister. Frantz Fanon, December 1956. Dr. Frantz Fanon, doctor of psychiatric hospital at the Blinda Joelville Psychiatric Hospital. To M, their resident minister, Governor General of Algiers. Dear Minister, upon my request and by decree dated 22nd October 1953, M, the Minister of Public Health and Population, was willing to place me at the disposal of the Governor General of Algeria to be assigned to a psychiatric hospital of Algeria. Placed at the psychiatric hospital in Blinda Joelville on 23rd November 1953. Since that date, I have performed the duties of medical director there. Although the objective conditions of psychiatric practice in Algeria were already a challenge to common sense, it seems to me that effort should be undertaken to render these vicious end systems, those whose doctrinal basis stood opposed daily to the authentic human perspective. For nearly 3 years, I put myself wholly at the service of this country and the people who inhabit it. I have spared neither my efforts nor my enthusiasm. There's not an ounce of my activity that has not demanded as its horizon the unanimously desired emergency of an acceptable world. But what are a man's enthusiasm and I care if daily reality is woven with lies, acts of cowardice and scorn for humankind? What are intentions if their embodiment is made impossible by the indigency? I can't say this word. Probably know the word, just can't say it right now. Let's find out. Oh, wait, who's there? I'll bring you up, but I don't know if we have coins, my friend. I don't know if we have coins. Indigence, a state of extreme poverty. And oh my gosh, what happened? What page are we on? Oh, there we are. Something weird to my thing. Where is he accepting the world? Okay, hold on. There it is. All right. A state of extreme poverty and deprivation characterized by a severe lack of basic resources necessary for survival, such as food, water, shelter, and money. And that's indigence. And I found the page we're on. Now I got to find the word again. There it is. Of heart. Sterility of spirit and hatred for this country's natives. Wildness is one of the ways that humans have of losing their freedom. And I can say that placed at this junction, I have measured with terror the extent of the alienation of this country's inhabitants. If psychiatry is a medical technique that sets out to enable individuals no longer to be foreign to their environment, I owe it to myself to state that the Arab, primarily alienated in his own country, lives in a state of absolute depersonalization. What is the statutes of Algeria? A systematic dehumanization. Now, the absurd wager was to want at whatever price to ensure the existence of some values, whereas lawlessness, inequality, and multiple daily murder of humanists were erected as legislative principles. The extent social structure in Algeria stood opposed to any attempt to put an individual back in his place or her place. Monsieur le Master, there comes a time when tenacity becomes morbid preservation. Hope is then no longer the open door into the future, but the illogical maintenance of the subjective attitude in the systematic break with reality. Monsieur la Ministerie of the observer's eyes, The current troubles and bloodshed in Algeria do not constitute a scandal. This is neither an accident nor a breakdown of the mechanisms. In the mechanisms, the trouble in Algeria are the logical consequences of the abortive attempt to de-cerebralize a people. It is hardly necessary to be a psychologist to divine that under the apparent infallibility of the Algerian, behind his bare humanity, there lies a fundamental demand for dignity. And nothing is so to be gained upon the occasion of demonstrations. It could not be plainer by appealing to some sort of civic mindedness. The function of the social structure is to set up institutions that are traversed by a concern for humankind. A society that forces its members into desperate solutions is an invaluable society that needs to replace. The citizen's duty is not to say so. No personal morality, no class solidarity, no desire to refrain from washing the dirty laundry in public can have a prior claim. No pseudo-national mystification finds grace when up against the demands to think. Monsieur le Ministre, the decision to punish the strikers of 5th July 1956 is a measure that appears literally irrational to me. Either the strikers were terrorized in their flesh and that of their family, and then it was necessary to understand their attitude, to judge it normal, and in consideration of the atmosphere, or else the abstentions expressed in a unanimous current of opinion and unshakable conviction, and then all punitive attitudes were superfluous, gratuitous, and ineffective. I owe it to the truth to say that the dominant trait of the strikers seemed not to be fear. Much more than this, there was an ineluctable wish to bring forth in calmness and silence a wholly new era of peace and dignity. The workers in the city must collaborate with the social phenomenon, but they must be convinced of the excellence of that lived society. There comes a time when silence becomes a lie, and the key intention of personal experience adapts poorly to permanent infringements on the most basic everyday values. For long months, my conscience has been the seat of unpardonable debates, and their conclusion is the will not to lose hope in man, that is to say, in myself. My decision is not to bear a responsibility at whatever cost on the false pretext that nothing else is to be done. For all these reasons, I have the honor, Monsieur le Ministre, of asking you to accept my resignation and put my mission on Algeria to an end. Yours sincerely. 21. The phenomenon and agitation in the psychiatric milieu. General consideration, psychopathological meanings. Frantz Fanon and Stelmane Assalea, Linda Joville Psychiatric Hospital, January 1957. In the lecture given at the meeting of L'Evolution Psychiatrie, that's all in French, Dr. Queselis distinguished between two types of agitation. With the expressive type, he contrasted the reactive type, such as contrast, which is heuristically interesting, at least there from the didactic viewpoint, seems to us unacceptable from the doctrinal viewpoint. Likewise, with the contrast between reactive and non-reactive agitation. In fact, we have exempt the profoundly toxic agitation with a serious impairment of consciousness. The agitated expression almost constantly accords with the precepto-reactive mode, or if you will, besides typically neurological agitation, within an automatic physiognomy made possible by brutal alterations of consciousness. in epilepsy, for example. Agitated behaviors is at once expressive and perceptive reactive. Clinically, it is possible to distinguish between the predominantly motor agitation, a predominantly verbal agitation, and a type of verbal motor agitation. Not intelligent people and, I don't know, imbeciles on the one hand, the senile on the other provide a rather impressive contingent for clinic pictures of pure motor agitation. From this, we have a course excluded: the paranoid's chloric outburst, the hebephrenic impulsion of the circumscribed agitation of the catatonic. Here we are aiming at agitation as a state, and we realize that the two impairment of neurological appearances. The two poles that favor the birth of motor agitation are characterized by an impairment of neurological appearances. The empty, I don't know this word. I'm going to try to say it. Ideational. Empty ideational. I wonder what that is. Where's my phone? There it is. Aideational. Oh, it is ideational, because they want me to change it to ideational, which is a specialized term primarily used in psychoanalysis, systematic functions, linguistics, and philosophy to describe something that lacks conceptual thought-based or image-driven content. Okay, agitation bordered on stereotypes, the pseudo-anxious meandering of the aged of the eleographrenic, which we're going to look up, lacerations of clothing. We're going to look this other word up. So I always have to pick the ones with the big words, the books with the big words in it. I guess just the stuff that, I don't know. Please let me say it. Oh, of course you're not. Subnormal or arrested mental development. Oligophrenic. Hold on, see, this will let me say it. Oligophrenic. That's what it's called. Oligophrenic, lacerations of clothing. Predominantly, verbal agitation appears less neurological, more comprehensible. In fact, the incoherent soliloquy of the so I don't know what that person, the verberation in shreds of the pre-biophrenic strikes us on the account of their automatic, archaic, disintegrated semantic character. Jesus Christ. Fucking funny. That was fucking funny. Lastly, perhaps the most studied types of agitated behavior is verbal motor agitation, precisely because it reveals the basic melody of the existing man, saying and doing, combined in the spatio-temporal structures, seems to maintain the organisms of the grasped world. In this perhaps why frank mania is the most studied clinical form of that form of agitation. In actual fact, verbal motor agitation exceed the frame of mania. Hysterical manifestations, acute phases of an active delusion with multiple themes adopting a physiognomy of a confused chloric agitation and Schneider's anxious seizures. What the hell is this word? Hold on. Oh my God. ECSTA. There we are.
Ecstatic.
Anxious ecstatic seizures all invoke the clinical picture of mania in more than one way. The mixed and the increasingly in large states in which Bringerger insisted suggests to us, at least for clinical observation, a certain liberty with respect to the traditional equation agitation equals mania. Consequently, we are quite at ease in claiming that the patient's behavior must be understood within the clinic of the question and its possibilities regarding assimilation. If the hospital environment is a therapeutic instrument, it above all else, the concern has been to institute a general framework of de-alienating encounters. If a will exists to treat the agitated living organism, then the question about authentic discrimination can be raised. The notion of facet psychosis, of morbid mental persistence, as well as spectacular relations of postures provocations with a strongly aggressive charge, such as those encountered in concentration camp environments. This sadomasochistic nodes so easily brought about in the asylum framework. All these things demand variable vigilance, benevolent neutrality, as to the discover here in all its purity. To view a service as a therapeutic instrument is to organize it, to lead to its being lived by the patient as that which understands at last, and not as that which amputates, that which castrates, scholastic aggression and willful malice of the patient, as they are endured by the staff, are evidently staff endured them, are evidently responses to the type of concentration camp structure of an essentially repressive character. Certainly, the service must be able to absorb pathological manifestations. An outbreak of agitations ought not to provoke the collapse or breakdown of institutional balance. Rather, agitation tests the service degrees of resistance, simultaneously probing its plasticity and its solidity. And as the agitated patient is not rejected, including isolated, placed in an isolation unit, one strives to understand him. The point is not at all to decree the abolition of all coercive means out of humanity or hitherto imitation. Fairly quickly, this runs the risk of setbacks and the reuptake of physical restraints and indulges in passionate overstatement. Putting the agitated patients in an isolation unit most often produces unwelcome effects. Isolating a mentally ill person within a psychiatric hospital means carrying out a second internment. The patient has already been expelled by the social milieu, which has requested his sectioning under the 1838 law. But the social milieu's demands are rigid. The external equilibrium has to be monolithic as regards certain behaviors. As for the hospital milieu, in most cases, it presents no organizational plan. The lines of force that contribute to constructing the phenomenal field are disastrously poor. Set aside the biological rhythm of 3 meals a day and sleep times. The mostly not bedridden mental patients. Days spent in asylums, courtyard suggest the expression of Brownian motion. It can quickly be seen that I'm going to try this. Physiognomically. We're going to look this up anyway. So I tried. Oh, it's soundbites. Thank you. Oh. Hey, sound. Nice to see you again. Do if you're still there. SIONOMICALLY. Thank you. Anyways, it's an adverb using to describe something related to a physical feature, an expression of a person's face. Now let's go find out how to say it. And of course, I gotta watch a video. Anybody want some QuickBooks? Jesus Christ. QuickBooks. Sorry.
Physiognomical or physiognomical.
Physiognomical. Something I will never be able to say.
Physiognomical. Physiognomical.
Physiognomical. Okay. Repressive means of immobilization. Means of immobilization are used at the staff's instigation. There you go. And oftentimes a doctor may suspect sadistic behaviors from this personnel. The chain reaction of prohibition on the type of the patient. Doctor is patient was broken every day. Doctor, this patient has injured 3 staff members. So doctor, can this patient be tied up? Appeared in vivitate relations between the doctor and his collaborators. In fact, the service itself is sadistic, repressive, rigid, non-socialized, and has castrative aspects. Consequently, the issue is less to advocate or command the suppression of straitjackets or isolation units than to foster in the milieu of circulation or productive, de-alienating the functional lines of force with a strong potential and differentiated demands. Internment brings about the first disadaptation. Isolation will that are, moreover, encouraged by the literal explanation of staff members. Quote, if you persist, you will be put in isolation or put with the agitated. Fails in its pseudo concerns to claim the patient's anxiety. In addition, due to the isolation, due to the solitude imposed, due also to the motor concentration, we know about the force of verbal kinetic melody and the body schema disorders that can appear along with a disjunction. We bear witness to the outbreak of new elements. Verbomotor agitation may become chlorlyric. Predatory. I'm going to make sure that's chlorlyric. Looks like it. Let's find out. Who's this? Oh my God, come on. I don't know that person. So we're talking about his psychiatric works, and this is him, I think. Yeah, hold on, let's look at this real quick. Choleric. Almost got it. Choleric. Being extremely irritable, easily angered, and bad temper. Choleric. Predatory, elastic, and furious due to isolation. It may also happen that the delusions of the hyposynthetic type that was isolated on the occasion of the burst of temper linked to the real and the entertained comprehensible relations with the environment comes to be complicated with hallucinations. The study ought perhaps to be done on these provoked hallucinations. On the other hand, the disillusions, and on the other, the organism's reaction, entail the regression of the anarchic type of thinking, more massive, more independent, on motoricity, less discriminative, discriminative concerns sensory data. The psychoanalysts think the onorism, pseudo-hallucinations, and the importance of games and mime essentially appears at the oral stage. Here's someone else. Logorrhea, the whirlpool emergency of the atmospheric festivities, the being there deployed simultaneously at both poles in temporality. I can't say the damn word. Sorry, everybody. Hey, what's up, Brianna? Temporarily express a vertiginous orality, but so too does aggressive vehement existence, replete with anxieties linked to infantile frustrations. The ease with which the classical type of agitated patients develops hallucinations has not been sufficiently borne in mind. In fact, the flight of ideas sets the stage for a hallucinatory phenomenon, verbal motor hallucinations, and a French word I can't say, saw this correctly when he linked the O as a person, when he linked with mental automatism, institutions, appreciated thoughts, echoes of thoughts, nonsense, explosive words. I don't know this word. It's a word I've never seen before. This is a day to look up words, I guess. And of course, I gotta watch another video.
Yeah, double espresso.
I was next.
You're on your phone. Come on.
Kyrielle.
Kyrielle is a French poetic form of features, 4 lines, stanza, quatrains composed of 8-syllable lines of words and silly. I gotta look up this word. Jesus Christ, this guy uses lots of hard words sometimes. SYLLABIC.
Syllabic.
Syllabic. Anything made of relating or to or dividing in syllables.
Syllabic.
Syllabic plays with. With the hallucinatory process, we witness the breakdown of the world equal a system of reference. Hallucinatory times as well as hallucinatory space do not make any claim to reality. We must, in the contrary, say with Sartre that hallucinations coincide with the abrupt annihilation of the previous reality. Hallucinatory times is the permanent flight. The spatio-temporal frame of hallucinatory activity is without order, unreal, fictive. And the phenomenon of belief, of which psychiatrists have insisted to so much, is what legitimates in the eyes of the hallucinatory subject the pseudo-important of his disorders. In practical terms, when isolations, immobilization, and the use of coercive methods through the sadistic instruments brought into play provoke or at least participate in a deepening the regression. Thought in flight is caught in the flow of images without the possibility for it to escape through the benevolent and realistic help of another. Shutting the patient in a cell, isolating him, fixing him to the bed. This amounts to printing the conditions of existence of hallucinatory activity, starting with anxiety, solitude, and the physiobiological feeling of catastrophe that features in nearly all mental illness and is here fueled by the aggression typical of rejection, of dislocation, and evident complication of the clinical treatment of hallucination arises. But hallucination is not the product of cerebral exaltation or the result of a specific encephalic. We're gonna look up this word. These science words are great. I don't have to like look them up over and over again, to be honest with you. Probably not gonna remember. Come on, thank you.
Encephalic.
Encephalic, related to the brain or located within the cranial cavity. Encephalic. Nutritional problems. Instead, hallucination is a global behavior, a type of reaction, a response of the organism. Of course, the hallucinatory response presupposes a dissolution, an organic impairment, a metabolic disorder. But the alterations are never unequivocal. We must continually refer to the work of McFarland and Goldstein on the level of metabolic stability in relations with the levels of emotional stability and those of Hodgkin on the chronic defect in oxygen that occurs with perturbation of enzymes catalysts in schizophrenia. It ought to be kept in mind that hallucination eludes a mechanistic explanation. Something else is required for a hallucination to appear critically, a breakdown of the real world. The phase within chronic hallucinatory delusions, termed rumination. I'm gonna make sure. Sorry, everybody. Oh, there's only two of us. Everybody left anyways. They're like, this guy can't read. Or this person, sorry. I keep doing it to myself. Of course, they won't let me... pronunciation.
Rumination.
Rumination, I was right. By the ancient authors is very eloquent. We know that after the initial phase characterized by hypochondriac preoccupation, by unusual bodily manifestations, or by strange visceral sensations, the patient undergoes a phase of anxious rumination, exacerbated ideational concentration, imperative distrust, and aggressive solitude. This is the pre-hallucinatory period, a phase of so-called interpretation. In actual fact, a rejection of the real world is enabled by the emergence of a pseudo-world based on new relations and meanings. This rejection requires continued confirmation. The solemn decisions phase of brutal invasion needs confirming as to be sustained. And the migrating mentally ill are precisely those who do not manage to neutralize or distance the existence of the surrounding world. Isolation in this perspective can thus operate as the authorization of hallucinate. Clinical services have a tendency to reject agitated patients without taking note of the reciprocal foundation that exists between each of the sides. It thus appears within the human framework, the clinical service itself. Agitation demands to be understood, not mechanically, but dialectically. The same people who refuse any such interpretations of the phenomenon admit and recognize the agitation diminished in accordance with staff training and the environment's disalienation, even superficial. A fitting expression is agitated as silent pure petrification. Prechapi himself wrote, long and extensive experience show that far from being effective in bringing about the calming of agitation among wild individuals. Permanent stays in an isolation unit have to be the contrary, the effect of augmenting and maintaining the agitation. If the hospital setting forms a knot of social relations and ambiguous encounters, then agitation loses its resonance as an entity. Irresponsible behavior is something incomprehensible. From a dialectical viewpoint, agitation then enters into the premodal cycle of the reflected mirror. You give to me, I receive and assimilate, I transform, I render to you. It is certainly not the case at all catastrophic reactions, of which agitation is only a modality, will disappear. But these attempts of organisms at explanations are restored to their value as signification. Second, internment, that isolation represents, is dispensed with once and for all. The service gets transformed in the lucid and conscious manner into a rolling mill, into a purifier. This notion of rigorous skills of armed suppleness of fully articulated institutions break with the vicious circles in which the patient tends to settle. What was once imitation of self-intoxication is rest in the open institutional framework, and it is one's insertion into these institutions that free consciousness of all vertigo. It remains that the pathological reality of primary symptoms collide with the institutions, and there can be no question of curing a case of hyperphoria or I gotta look at these words. Jesus Christ. Don't have any coins, everybody. Sorry, just don't have coins. HEBEPHRENIA. And of course, it's not gonna let me say it. I have to fucking Hebephrenia. And the other one is or HYPERESTHENIC. And of course, I have to watch a video. This is not fucking like hypersthenic paranoia, owing to the play of effective emotional investment enabled by the clinic's organization. Moreover, holding an agitated individual in this environment fatigues the encouraged entourage, owing to the tiresome stimulation of which he is the agent. In this medication it's all in French, Janet especially emphasized the harmlessness of self-conduct. The organized service highlights the residual picture of diminishes to use IE's terms of organo-clinical gap. The first task of the service is to reduce this gap to a bare minimum, the pre- and para-therapeutic task. Here, it does not seem useless to recall that understanding the need to organize the ward, to institutionalize it, to make it social conduct possible within it, to generate any mystification grounded in references to the outside world. This is how you can understand notions such as the village hospital. The hospital, a reflection of the outside world. Inside the hospital is like outside. The patient should feel at home, and so on. Such expressions, you will surmise, are an attempt to mask the reality beneath falsely psychotherapeutic humanitarian concerns. By the La Galante is absolutely right to condemn these unreal attitudes. Moreover, if the hospital is the outside milieu, the tendency to legitimate it, to provide it with systems of equilibrium reminiscent of the outside, is very strong. Without warning, the police office or the doctor unexpectedly meets with the head of the ward's decision to cut dessert, or the orderly's threat to transfer a patient to the ward of agitated or they use senile patients. Agitation is a foreign body, but the wild person is as well. A clinic ought to enable a reconciliation between the existing being and his manifestations. It ought not to refuse anything from the patient. Outside of the clinic, the patient cannot knock on any door. The hospital setting is paradoxically the last chance for a social group that wants to rid itself of wild persons, and for the mentally ill person seeking his or her lost meaning. Consequently, the point can never be purely and simply to calm down an agitation. Telephone consultations and ministers Soldel or Laurent Colette, I can't say his name, attest to the total ignorance of the pathological mechanisms involved. Agitation is not merely an excrescence of psychomotor cancer. It is also, and above all, a modality of existence, a type of actualization and expressive style. Agitation disarms, since it is what reunites the structures. It can appear at all levels of dissolution. Any such ambiguity is indeed apt to provoke catastrophic reactions. This is why the wild man whose knows he is doing meets in the isolation unit with the wild person who does not know what he is doing. In actual fact, the agitated individual at once he does not know what he is doing, but he is trying to find out. These are the attempts that clarify here and there the scene, leaving the observer with the disagreeable impression of being fooled. Thus, even at the bottom of this disordered anarchic behavior, which are stamped with the seal of nonsense, the fundamental ambiguity of existence is integrally assumed. Jesus. A lot of hard words in that one. What are we at? 22 biological studies in the actions of lithium citrate on bouts of mania. J. Sauerdorer and Franz Fanon, 1957. This study was carried out with and at the investigation of Dr. Fanon at Belinda Psychiatric Hospital. In 1955 to 1957, owing the departure of Franz Fanon at the start of February 1957, the article was not published. After fine-tuning the dosing techniques of sodium, potassium, and lithium by flame spectrophotometry. I tried. What is it? Hey, can I please be accepted? Why do you want to be accepted? We don't have no coins. If you're looking for coins, we don't have coins. 0 coins. I don't know how many times I have to say this. No one has coins. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to be honest. I don't want you to waste I don't want to waste your time when you could probably go and get something from other people that might have more people. But no one likes to come to the readings. Oh, fuck off. I have to.
Spectrophotometry.
Spectrophotometry. Spectrophotometry, which is an analytical method used to measure how much chemical substance absorbed or transmitted light, and of calcium and magnesium by complexometry. Oh my gosh, another word. Complexometry. Oh, it hurt me. Complexometry. Pronunciation. And of course, I gotta watch another video. Anybody want to play Township, the game? Just kidding. Complexometric. Jesus Christ. Complexometric. A form of a volumetric analysis where the complex agent, most commonly EDTA, reacts with mental ions and form a stable, often color water-soluble complex. We follow the variation of movements of these, oh my gosh, cations of the plasma and the cerebrospinal fluid and the urine of 7 patients treated with lithium citrate, sodium variations. With the plasma, overall the rates of sodium increased over the course of treatment before stabilizing. The cerebrospinal fluid on average decrease. The urine an increase in elimination with the tendency towards stabilization. Potassium variation. as the doses of potassiums were administered on an empty stomach in the morning with the patient at rest, approximation is given of the variations throughout the 24 hours during which the patient can go from being calm to being in a state of agitation. The plasma, the level of potassium tends to decrease and then to stabilize. The CFS, the CSF, in an increase of potassium level is notable with a tendency towards stabilization. The urine, we are able to illustrate a reduction of eliminations with stabilization occurring in the variable periods after the start of the treatment. Calcium variation. In plasma, the calcium shows only a little variation in the general remaining near normal. In CSF, levels remain rather constant. In the urine, the general elimination tended to reduce throughout the treatment and to stabilize at the lower level. Magnesium variations. In plasma, relatively considerable variations were noted with a tendency towards stabilization. It must be indicated that the method used for dosing the magnesiums in the plasma were not as precisely as they are today. In CSF, the level remained stable. The urine elimination intended to reduce it and to stabilize at the lower level as little calcium. Lithium variation. In plasma, the level remained always very low, 2 milligrams/1,000, even when the daily dosage reached 3 GR of lithium citrate, which is 240 milligrams of lithium in 3 doses of 1 GR each. The maximum level was 5 milligrams 1,000 one day after a dose of 1 GR of citrate, a minimum level of 0.7 milligrams 1,000. In the CSL, levels varied from 0.25 to 1.3 milligrams 1,000. In urine, average elimination after 24 hours among our patients was between 51 milligrams and the maximum of 118 milligrams. This elimination also tended to stabilize after the certain period of treatment. Duress variations. This stabilized and returned to normal through reduction or increase of the volume starting from 24 hours. Attempt at interpreting the results. Given the elimination on the ion lithium was far lower than the absorbed quantities, take into consideration and the increase in the doses and reject the refusal capsule of lithium very low. It can be concluded that, as some authors have already foreseen, lithium is retained in the tissue. Bozier and Hazard's work on the effect of lithium on a isolated frog heart and on the isolated rat intestine have shown that ion lithium produced roughly the same effects as ion sodium, but at levels about 1/3 lower. Contrary to the results obtained with sodium, frog heart stopped by lithium did not start again until after washing and the isolated rat intestine, the toughness of which was suddenly diminished by the lithium immediately recouped its toughness after washing. The results of these works seem to be that 1. Ion lithium has an analogous effect to sodium, but at lower doses corresponding to the difference of atomic weight. 2. Lithium seems to leave the cells less rapidly than sodium, since the organ must be washed in order to obtain the cessation of its effect. We therefore examine the psychochemical properties of lithium, and we observe that, thanks to the smallness of its radius, lithium has a higher capacity for solvation in the solution or the crystalline form, from which follows a high solubility for halide ions, which is without an analogy in the series of other alkylate. Ion lithium shares these properties with ion magnesium, on which the greater ionic radius is offset by its double charge. It would seem that ion lithium penetrates more easily into the cells than ion sodium. That it displaces the lead's more water molecules than ion sodium into the cell, which could modify intercellular reaction. Our attention was also attracted by the weak solubility of lithium phosphate and carbonates, as well as the same magnesium salts. The poor solubility of these ions might explain the slow down of the lithium release in comparison with sodium, and might therefore modify certain intercellular reactions of phosphate or carbonates, are the major ions of this milieu. This partial replacement of sodium by lithium can perhaps explain its effect on mania, owing to the modification that it ought to contribute the metabolic reaction and to ionic movements tending towards regulation. For the bibliography of lithium, see this person's name. I can't say the name. Biology and pharmacology of lithium. For this study, okay, yeah. All right, 23. The case of the torsion spasm. Let me make sure. Torsion spasm? Hold on a second, making sure. Of course it won't say it. Fucking bastards.
Torsion.
I was right, torsion. Nice. We present you here today with a case of torsion spasm, or, I cannot say this word, disease also called Diabesia lordica. Patient's history. Antonio F. was born prematurely at 7 months on 3rd September 1936. He was the seventh of 10 living brothers and sisters. The mother is supposed to have endured a significant lumbar spine trauma, which said to have been the cause of the premature birth. He was born blue and had to be resuscitated. A significant... Oh my gosh, come on. I'm tired of stopping every 5 words. And of course, no pronunciation. Just, this thing is not like Icterus seems to have appeared during the first days. On the 3rd day, convulsions appeared. The mother noted that the infant displayed pendular eye movements during his first months. Antonio's development gradually drew the attention of his entourage on the account of his serious motor slowing down. He began to walk at 4 and formed his first words at 5. Schooling was attempted at 7 years of age, but torsion and puppet movements provoked remorseless irony from his classmates. At 2 months, Antonio was taken out of school. At that time, his head was alive with tonic movements and had a tendency to go into hypertensions. At 13 of age, his parents' attention was drawn to his protruding large stomach and accentuated lumbar lordosis and the progressive incapacitating of his right arm. At 14, the disorders progressed markedly, making all movement extremely difficult. During this period, the dilated foetus examination, DFE, displayed a pupil pallor without other symptoms of EEG, was roughly normal. At 20, he suddenly underwent a grand mal epileptic seizure with tongue biting and urine emissions. An EEG taken at the time showed disorganized recordings without focalization, but with a major electrical delay. In subsequent months, typical absence were noted in the family environment, which required the addition of some... Oh my gosh, another word. Oh my gosh, you even spelled it wrong. Come on, spell it right for me, please. And it gave me the wrong one too again.
Epi one.
Epidowen. Yeah. To the barbiturates. In September 1958, a second fit broke out, identical to the first. He was admitted to the clinic in 29th October 1958. His parents had significant pathological antecedents. However, 2 miscarriages prior to Antonio's birth, and another one several pregnancies later can be reported. Patient's presentation. Antonio F., 21 years of age, 1.448 meters in height, presents the typical pictures of torsion spasms. He's heavily and grotesquely contorted. Gout was reminiscent of a locoon of a macabre clown, according to the now classic expressions of August Wimmer, bearing an abnormally enlarged supported pylon, and the foot attacks the ground through his sole, mainly to the left. At the level of the lower limbs, there is a permanent hypertonia of the extensor muscles of the thigh and leg. The pelvis is markedly tilted to the rear. Its upper canal protrudes above and below through the rotation around the clitoid axis, with its riding up towards the back. The pelvis digs into the kidneys, displaces the stomach to the front, exaggerating to the maximum the posterior cavity, lordosis. There is no, oh my gosh, gotta look up this word. Oh. Hypotonia. Pronunciation. Hypotonia in the anterior abdominal muscles. However, there is a constant hypertonia at the level of the anti-gravity muscles, spasmodically reinforced, thus accentuating the lordosis even further. The head is literally tilted to the left and back. The occiput appear to go contrary to the pelvis. While walking, the right arm is emanating by rocker arm type tonic movements, where the left arm remains stuck to the side of the body. An Arctic, oh my gosh, intempestive spasms. I can't sit in this.
Intempestive.
It's, of course, it's French. Impotiste spasms involving the head, the trunk, and the right arm, determined and twisted, undilating, mannered, jolting walk in the manner of dislocating puppet. Jesus Christ. With Antonio, as with most described cases of torsion spasm, there seems to be a inverse relations between the amount of muscular effort required in the uncoordinated movements. This is how the torsion spasms, properly speak, diminish considerably in intensity whenever the organism in its totality finds itself engaged in an important task, such as carrying a heavy object or running at a brisk pace. The upright position is unstable. There is a variable torsion of the trunk at the left concavity of the lordosis. The head fixed to hyperextension, deviated literally to the left, is shaken but with spasms. As a result, Antonio seeks a favorable position that limited the amplitude of these movements, most often by leaning against the wall. In this position, the calisthenic spasms is certainly restricted, but is not altogether eliminated. The wall, which forms a really active support, gets pounded on by the posterior face of the cranium. This spasmodic pressure of the head against the wall would explain our patient's scalp's alterations and the exotosis. Gotta look that word up now. So we gotta look up every 5 words. It's just because it's all like science stuff, you know what I mean?
Exostosis.
Exostosis of the outer table of the occipital bone. In the dorsal decubitus. Gotta look up that word. Jesus Christ. Go away, hair.
Decubitus.
Decubitus. Troubles are reduced to a minimum. The attitude appears normal, but it is far from an attitude of real rest. A muscular resolution at the limit of the normal is notable without any tonic disturbances. Neither extrafemoral hypertonia nor hypertonia. Hypotonia or hypertonia. But I gotta look at this other word. Oh my god. EXTR. Extra. I can't say that's why. PYRAM. Okay, I'm trying to get pronunciation.
Extrapyramidal.
Extrapyramidal. At most, the privileged attitude of the head with left lateral and slightly forward deviation, the trunk bent to a curve on the left. Spontaneously, the extremities are not animated by any involuntary movement. However, from time to time, some hand and finger movements arise that invoke, oh my gosh, subastonic. Oh my gosh, I gotta look at this word too. Jesus Christ. SUBATHETOSIC. Did I spell it right? Of course, I have to fucking get to the pronunciation. And of course, I gotta watch a fucking thing.
Subtopic.
That's not what it says. It says subtopic. It must be a different language. Movements. Moreover, the slightest Of course, I cannot. This is so inconsistent.
Invitation.
That doesn't say invitation. I didn't say invitation. Oh my God. It still gets me to invitation. I didn't say invitation. It says incentation. Without aura, spasms appear that follow one another in an avalanche. In this instance, the hypertonia of the neck muscles is slowly, powerfully exaggerated. Then the trunk curves inward on the left and the upper limbs go into hypertension. The hands bent over the forearm and the fingers over the palm. The tonic phases then reaches the lower limbs. The hypertonia is at once maxima but never affects the facial muscles. The tonic seizures last between 30 seconds and a minute and disappears without clonic manifestations and without affecting consciousness. In a general way, the spasms are influenced neither by the forced head flexion, nor by the ocular occlusions. The seated position is possible when Antonio is strongly held by the posterior face of the head. If this support diminishes, the trunk gradually curves out inward and form a certain angle. A large spasm emerges that will thrust the subject suddenly into invincibly backward. The spasms intensifies with emotion, fatigue, and muscles, and disappear during sleep and under neurosis, as we have been able to observe. Paradoxically, this great motor disorder involves without a neurological sign. Primordially, signs are absent, and primordially bundles are intact. The tenuous reflex are normal. In this no clonus or Barbeschia response, the contentious, I gotta look at this word. I'm trying these words. I'm getting kind of a little bit frustrated because I have to look up every 5 seconds. I have to look up a word. I mean, there's a couple words I just went over and just sounded out because I'm tired of like every 5 seconds having to put this down to look up a word. This is like what this is them doing their evaluation
Cutaneous.
on some cutaneous reflexes. They're doing their things on these people. Are present. Our modes of sensibility are unharmed. Study of muscular tonus is made difficult by the existence of waves and spasmodic contractures. Nevertheless, not lasting hypertonia appears to exist. There is no fibrillation. Fibrillation. Oh my gosh, gotta look at this word too. Jesus Christ. So it's getting kind of a little bit frustrating to have to look up a word every like 5 words. Come on, of course, no pronunciation. And the stretching out and drawing in of the limbs does not cause hypertonia to appear. There is no metactic reflex. The cranial nerve pairs are unharmed. Speech is disrupted. And we're able to note that Antonio F. even has a very developed musculature. There are no visceral disturbances. Liver and spleen are not palpable. Heart sounds normal. Pulse of 70. The arterial tension of 12 out of 8. There are no pigmentation problems. Hairness is normal, as are the secondary sexual features. We must signal a considerable prevailing hyperhidrosis on the upper limbs without further vegetative disorders. Jesus Christ. Mental examination. Same person. The patient has some mental slowing down with a certain degree of pluralism. He has had no schooling. His IQ is at the level of a 7-year-old. He has a good understanding of words and gestures. Affectivity is unimpaired. Instead, there is a state of sub-anxiety at each time that Antonio finds himself alone, such as when the time comes to leave the CNPJ and he is waiting for his brother. There is no menisque trouble. His humor, being without being jovial, remains general, gay in tone. The praxia are intact. There are no visual or tactile agnosticisms. This is a perennial paraclinical test. The DFE shows a papilia with a large and deep psychological sort of excavation. There is no muscular or peripheral disintegration. There is no Kaiser Fletcher rings. Jesus Christ. Cranial x-rays show the exostasis of the external table of the occipital, probably due to spasmodic bumps of the head against the wall in a favorable upright position that we described above. The EEG, despite repeating recording, does not demonstrate any signs of epilepsy. The only thing recorded is the right unilateral muscular artifacts. The rest of the tracings are illegible. It was not possible to undertake a recording of sleep patterns. Summary. Hopefully this is the end. We are dealing with a patient born premature at 7 months, who during his first days of life had convulsions and then icterus. He is clearly slowed down on the psychomotor level. The torsion spasms appear as a 17 years of age. He has had 3 grand mal epileptic seizures since 1956. There are several reasons for presenting this patient. First, because cases of torsion spasms are rare. In 1936, Zadar was able to count a mere 65 of them in the literature. Second, because the torsion spasm has been the focus of several pathogenic discussions, which are further clarified by the last International Neurological Congress in Brussels in 1957. Lastly, because the proposed therapies have been overturned by the contributions of neurosurgery. Schwab describes the first case of torsion spasm in 1908. 1 year later, Jenny, followed notably by Abraham in 1911, came to specify the general physiognomy in this syndrome. These authors describe torsion spasm as a familial cryptogenetic illness, appeared in Jewish individuals, Polish or Russian people. The various authors since then have been classified as either unicystic or autonomous. Encystis, unicysts. Thurvan describes torsion spasm as a simple particular case of diagnosis and posture. Indeed, the Theodard, oh my gosh, I swear to God, I am trying my hardest, but I'm just I try my hardest to sound these words out because I don't want to stop every 5 seconds to find a word. It's so annoying. It's getting annoying. And I didn't delete this first one first. Dystonias. Please. Oh, of course not. You're not going to be. Of course you're not. Oh, Jesus Christ. Dystonias. Neurological movement of disorder is characterized by involuntary muscular contraction that causes twisted, repetitive movements or abnormal posture. Of posture, grouped together non-paralytic motor disorders and those of diagnostic nature, the shared characteristics of which is their involving electively the anti-gravity muscles achieving their maximum development in the upright standing position and disappearing in the decubitus. Thus, in addition to these unilateral posture diagnoses, there are generalized posture diagnoses that twist backward or torsion spasms. For Fromont, following backward from the standpoint position is essentially due to the inefficiency of action of the trunk and pelvis flexors on the thigh. Also, unicysts. Hall sought to classify torsion spasm as a hepatolenticular disintegration. Lastly, we ought to flag the opinions of Marchand and Algoreria, who include torsion spasms among the tonic epilepsies. Autonomousness next to this tendencies, others think that the torsion spasm is a syndrome in its own right, an individual clinical entity in a group of illnesses, and the extra primordial system. Positive diagnosis of Zinhofer-Meyer disease. Jesus Christ. Let's see here. I want to look at something. 458. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. 458. Clinically, this diagnosis is based on the gradual onset of usually occurs at the level of the distal extremities of the limbs, predominantly unilateral, with the spasm spreading in a gradual fashion. In the acute phase of the clinical picture, specific to Macreb clown, spasms are variably maximal. When in the standing position, diminishing when the decubitus, the problems have extraprimordial characteristics. They exaggerate with emotional tiredness and are not under volitational control. They are few neurological signs of the primordial bundle and not impaired. Besides the pure cases, numerous clinics exist. The descriptions have been proved of the case with rigidity, reminiscence of decelebrated rigidity, with abnormal movements typical of athetosis, with, oh my gosh, I gotta look at this word. I know. It's annoying me. I wish I can pronounce things better, instead of having to stop every 5 seconds to look something up. And then them like giving me the wrong things. And then this thing is not at all like consistent at all. It's kind of annoying sometimes. Of course not. I have to, and if they're not even giving me a thing, because they keep changing it on me. I'm just gonna move on. Crises and with epileptic seizures, automatically. Oh, that's not. Automatically, the torsion spasm. There is a diffuse impairment of the basal ganglia, with a clear impairment of the extraprimordial centers of the stratum and to the pallidum, to the lias body, and often also the thalamus and hypothalamus. Moreover, also discovered was the impairment to the denated nucleus and the cerebellum and the, oh my gosh, pontocerebellar system, and to the hippocampus, and the primordial tracts are intact. Etiologically, outside the three main etiological types, familial, cryptogenetic, torsion spasms of post-tymphanic syndromes, torsion spasms in hepatodegeneration, other infection, toxic or degenerative etiological factors were named. Discussions surrounded certain patients focus on the roles of abstructural trauma and provoking discrete lesions that show relatively late in the pitch Wimmer was given to the considering the existence of. I'm done with this. I can't do this. I cannot do this every 5 seconds. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I'm gonna move on. I'm moving on. I can't sit there What he's doing is he's like examining and showing like the results of this person and where it comes from and the history of these things and how it shows up and where it shows up and everything. And it's just one word after another to have to keep on like going. So I'm done. I'm done with that. I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm done. Can't do it. Thanks for following, Yusuf. The first test using injectable metachromate in hypochondriac states. Franz Fanon and Lucien's Levy, 1959. I think I'm going to stop here. I'm done. I am done. I'm stopping here. Great. Now I lost where I was at. Can someone give me the page, please? Can someone give me the page I was just on? Please? Please, someone? Page? Anybody? Page? Please? Hello? Help? Page? Not you, fuck it. I'll just go look for it. I was hoping Lynn would give me the page. I would love the page. I would love the page. Torsion spasm. I found the torsion spasm one. All right, 464. 464. 464. I found it. 464. That's where we're stopping. Let's see here. I want to look ahead. Because, like, these, it's all great and everything. Like, they're doing these reviews of these things, and I'm just like, I don't know. Day hospitalization, psychiatric values and limits. That would be a good one. That's going to be a good one, I think. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of graphs in that one. Holy shit. So many graphs. Oh my god. That's going to be a long one. Got a lot of graphs in it though. Day hospitalization and psychiatric values. I think that might be good. I'm trying to figure out when they go into the next section. So I'm going down this thing just real quick. The psychiatric stuff is just over my head. That's all it is. Like, some of these things were good, and some of these things are just over my head. And it's like every other word is a medical term. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not going to sit here and look up every single one all the time. It's like, no point. It's like, I might as well just do that on my own, honestly. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out something here. Looking to see when section 4 starts. There we go. So 528 is when the political writings start. We'll see. We'll see. Let's go through the other ones just to see. And if they're just like blah, we'll just move on. We'll just keep going on until we find good ones. Because there has been good sections in this. That section, I just like, to me, it was just like, why am I reading this? I get it, but why? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not connecting to the reasons why to read it. It seems for like people that know about this field, like in depth, would probably be validated in this. But that's why Joe likes this part. So, all right, everybody, who's in here? Good, no one is. All right, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and close it down. Thank you. Talk to you.